Alright, I've got the bug. I've got the comedy bug. I did stand up, if you want to call it that, I guess. Oh god, I'm doing stand up. It's awesome. I love it. It's so much fun. I'm having a blast. Well, I just feel this whole new flood of opportunity. It is like having a clean slate in a way and starting over, but having knowledge, and it's not that dissimilar from a lot of the things I've been doing. And so I can take skills that I've learned through music, through doing poetry readings, through doing this, and I can immediately put them to work, actually, in a way that's a little bit more. With stand up, there's just so much freedom, I feel. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't think applying value judgment to it at this point is important. I think it's unrealistic to look at it like you're gonna go in and just immediately start killing or whatever. And I haven't had bad sets. I'm not saying that to justify, my own failures. I would say I've had pretty successful experiments, even though I haven't gone into it really with any very much material at all. I'm just testing the waters and just seeing. To me, it's a canvas. Last night we had 6 minutes. To me, that is a blank canvas. That's how I want to use these open mics. I want to use them as sites of composition, much like this. I want to create an archipelago of anecdotes and stories that trickles all over the world, Manhattan, Brooklyn, New Jersey, Long Island, the Bronx, upstate, and on and on and on. Connecticut, Washington, D.C., Pittsburgh, etc., etc., L.A. Now I really want to go back to L.A. to do some stand-up out there. It's unlocked this whole other scene to me that's kind of fun. That, like, literally I can just go by myself. There's open mics every fucking place, and you can just kind of insert yourself and go. And they give you 5 minutes of stage. I mean, to be honest, like, I would say half of the sets are not great. Let's just say that. And it could really. I mean, I do think the comedians are too influenced by the audience. At these open mics specifically, because it's a bunch of other comedians, a lot of whom have probably seen you perform before, and maybe have even seen these jokes. I mean, I saw a couple people, because I've been going to a bunch of these open mics just to watch. I've seen multiple people more than once, and I've seen the same jokes more than once. And so, like, I think these comedians get into open mic, the grind of it, and they get into that 10,000 hours mindset, and it takes 10 years to be great at it. And they just kind of get this miserable attitude about it. That was toward the end of the open mic last night. That was kind of like the vibe. The beginning, there was probably 20 or 30 people there. It started out, I'd say, it went on forever. The list was long. I'd been there for 2 hours by the time I went up. I was near the bottom of the list when I signed up. I was like 16th or something. So it started at like 7:15 or so. I went up at like 9:15. And the first hour or hour and a half, people are pretty enthusiastic, and most people stay for at least like an hour and a half. But around that time, that's when people start to dip. They tell you, oh, it's just good etiquette to stay for the whole open mic. But if you're going on within the first 5 or 10 people, you're probably going to leave after an hour and a half. Because what have you got to gain by staying? It's sad. It's a sad fucking. Like, comedians, a lot of them, not all of them, but, like, I do think they're very sad people. And they're trying to make the best of a bad situation. You know, it's like those pictures of all the people who killed themselves. This is what clinical depression looks like, and they're all like smiling, and like, you know, Robin Williams and Chris Farley and shit, and they're all like, and then they, you know, they die young because they have a death wish or something. This one guy who went up last night was Palestinian. He was an orphan, even though he's 24 years old. Both of his parents were gone. And he just seemed really sad. I mean, I felt for the guy. To me, I'm more trying to investigate that intensity. My inspiration, because I'm looking at it like, maybe I said this yesterday. I literally just did this yesterday. I think there's a frequency of comedy that's like black metal or something. Something that has an intensity where it's more about kind of the truth and the honesty almost than the jokes, let's say. I mean, I guess it's inevitable that I'm going to probably be doing some kind of unusual conceptual comedy or something that's not the typical. I don't know that I could. I don't know that I'm going to be like the joke guy. Jackie the Joke Man. But seeing this guy at Young Ethel's, who was sitting, he sat down, he was wearing a baseball hat, and the baseball hat kind of shadowed his eyes. It was just intense. It was almost like a confessional. He had kind of a cop, like a detective from like Chicago vibe, but he was dressed like, I'm sure he was like a sports fan. He probably watches Sports Center and shit like that. But he sat, and he held, you know, he had the microphone like this with his baseball hat down. And he was like, I'm trying to work on being comfortable with silence and do that on stage. And he brought it way down in a way that I found really intense and I liked. To me, the comedy open mics, I mean, I thought what I did, like what I've done at every open mic, I thought was funny, let's say. But I also thought, I don't know, I wanted to be as intense and as honest as that guy was. And that's something that I see. I mean, maybe not so much in comedy anymore, but a lot of the stuff I've been watching, specifically the Howard stuff, it's like these comedians, they always go to the heart of it. Whatever, like, the most kind of, I don't know, antagonistic or, like, for instance, or they go to just, like, what's dirty, or they go to they try to get to the truth. I mean, with Howard, it's almost like a scramble where they're trying to, like, they're all trying to jump on the football, and the football is, like, the truth. It's like all of them are kind of got it surrounded. It's like they're piling on, I mean, we don't play this game anymore, and it's probably not an accepted name, but when I was a child, there was sort of a whiff, my Uncle Bill, I think, I don't remember, of some kind of far off, you know, maybe in the 70s and 80s they invented this game, and it was called, and I quote, Smear the Queer, right? Now, this is an example of like bringing up something that's like very intense and uncomfortable maybe, but I feel like there's juice in this issue. Smear the Queer. This was a game. I remember in high school we were joking with Mr. Hecker, who was our sort of funny, cool English teacher. He was a big influence in my life, I would say. He'd probably be embarrassed to hear that, but we were joking about this. How there was this game called Smear the Queer. Well, somebody had brought it up in the class or something, and Hecker goes, "That's not a very, you know, cool name for the game. Maybe we can update that or change it." And we're like, "Oh yeah, well, what do you call it?" And he's like, "Well, how about Accept the Queer?" He was funny, and he was right. I mean, it's a heinous. This was the hell world we grew up in. And I think that's why we're sort of between these two ideologies or something. These new expectations. But anyway, yeah, that was a game. The smear the except the was if you had a football, it was like whoever had you wanted to get rid of it because whoever had the football, everybody like went after and tackled. That's what Howard's like. But anyway, so last night, this guy that went on right before, and I went on. By the time I went on, there was probably only about 10 people there. I think there was about 3 people over here. There were 2 people, and then there were like 4 or 5 over here. And that was fine with me because I didn't really know what I was going to do. My main thesis, I was going to talk about my mom. And specifically, I had this joke about how it wasn't even a joke. It was just kind of a premise. I just thought if I go up on stage and talk about something that's fueling me, it'll at least be interesting and probably funny things will happen. And the thing about these open mics is they are practice spaces more or less. And so I don't feel like it's inappropriate for me to go and do this. I mean, maybe I'm not going to kill or anything. I'm not, and it is a little unusual what I'm doing. I think people probably see me and they're like, okay, this guy's just riffing or whatever. He's not serious. He didn't write material. He's not rehearsing his material. Like literally all these comedians are using it for the same purpose, which is it's like doing reps. They go, they try new stuff, and if it gets a laugh, they think, okay, that worked. Which, to be honest, I don't know. Sometimes the audience just laughs because they're in a good mood at the top of the show and shit like that. Like, I know that I laugh at shit that's not funny sometimes just because I'm trying to help the guy out. I want the room to feel like, maybe this sounds insane, but I do feel like I have, and maybe everybody feels this way, but I do feel like I have an influence on the crowd in any room that I'm in. Even when I'm in the audience, especially when I'm in the audience. I feel like if I'm vocal and I clap enthusiastically, everybody's going to be like, whoa, this is good. Maybe that sounds insane, but so sometimes I'll like laugh at stuff that's like I'm just trying to make other people comfortable with laughing and get a lot of people are passive and a lot of people are looking for somebody else to do it first before they can feel good about it. And so it's not always, super flattering to be that guy, but a lot of times I'm like the first person to clap, and I kind of will clap a little bit like Charles Foster Kane for his wife. Nobody gets that reference. Trying to force other people to clap. But it works. I mean, this one guy went up who was just like such a club comic. He came up and he's like, "Hey, give it up one more time for you. Let's hear if give some more noise for the hosts." Hey, it's been, and then he closed out. All right, it's been fun, everybody. Have a good, It's like this guy. At the end, he went into Dave Attell voice. Oh, my weenie. It's like he literally did the voice. I'm not impressed by that. I'm not trying to be one of those. I mean, this is one of the things that I think the comedy in Manhattan is different. What I was doing was more similar to what people in Brooklyn are doing, and like what the people on that Bar Freitas show were doing. And so people in Manhattan might see it and just be like, "Oh, this guy's annoying. He thinks he's some kind of art comic or something." So, but anyway, so the guy that went on right before me, and like I said, the night was basically over. No one was really even paying attention at that point. Everybody was kind of looking at their phones, and they were just waiting for their turn. Which, I'm relatively new to this, so I wasn't necessarily deterred by that. I wasn't like, oh my god, this is the 1,000th open mic I've done, and like, I gotta go to work in the morning, and Jesus Christ, let's get this over with. I just want my stage time. To me, it was like, I was a little nervous because I really didn't know what I was going to say at all. I had a few things in my head I was sort of turning over to just kind of be a little prepared. But I was afraid I wasn't even going to be able to talk for 6 minutes. When I did 8 minutes at Broadway Comedy Club, I thought, oh my God, this is way longer than I thought. Last night, I easily could have did 20 more minutes. I could have filled an hour, I'm sure. Maybe it's this great weed I've got. And maybe I did go too hard, but I don't know, I felt like there was a place for that. I don't think I did anything that was like un-PC. But maybe what I was doing was a little bit intense and too revealing. At one point I said something about how I'm a drug addict. Like I said, I really just wanted to be honest more than anything. I wanted to call bullshit on any fucking thing I could think of. So, or not, just call truth on anything I could think of. So this guy before me, he kind of looked like Dale Roberts, who I went to school with, and he was wearing a baseball hat. He was just like, to be honest, he's a comedy writer. This guy was, there's a lot of these guys that look like they act and they look and they affect like they're comedy writers. They're not really performers. And I think, you know, like Bob Hope had writers. I think they would be smart to get with good performers. But anyway, so this guy, I don't remember, but somehow he brought up a fleshlight or something. And there was an older woman. There was a woman probably 70 or something in the crowd. And he asked her about if she knew what a fleshlight was or something. And her answer was kind of ambiguous. I can't remember. And so, I don't know. It was the first thing, for whatever reason, when I got up there, it was the first thing I wanted to address. And I asked the woman, I said, you know what a fleshlight is. Of course you know what a fleshlight is. And she's like, no. She looked kind of offended. Which I was completely surprised by. Because I thought, this woman's at a stand-up comedy open mic. Even though she's 70, she looked like, I don't know, she looked like fucking Happy Gilmore's grandma. Like, she looked like a little old lady, you know? But I'm like, she's in a comedy club. You know, comedians are dirty, a lot of them. So, like, she has to know what a fucking fleshlight is. Like, granted, maybe she's never been on the internet. Like, they weren't exactly selling fleshlights on 1-800 infomercials or anything. But, I thought she probably would somehow have, like, my grandma's on AOL and shit. Does my grandma, she probably doesn't know what a fleshlight is. But, I don't know, it's, if you hanging out in comedy clubs, there's a lot of pervs, I'm sure someone has mentioned fleshlights. So I went right for it, I was like, you know, I'm sure you know what a fleshlight is. She's like, no. She looked offended. And maybe I offended everybody. But my sense of it was, I wasn't really stopping for laughs. I thought if I just said interesting things for 6 minutes, and to be honest, that was funny. I asked the old lady if she knew it, and then, so I went into my fleshlight material. To me, a fleshlight, I thought what it originally was, I thought it was a flashlight that if you had sex with it, it would, like, power the flashlight. You know, like those flashlights that have, like, a fishing wheel on the side that, like, if you crank it real fast, it, like, powers the flash. It's like for camping. I thought a fleshlight was like that. Like, you have sex with it, and it's like a flashlight. I mean, I guess I don't know what a fleshlight either. I guess I was way off. But the thing that I find really kind of unnecessary and mysterious, and kind of the essence of the fleshlight, is why is it shaped like a flashlight? That seems not, like, it's weird. It's almost like this Cronenberg fucking, like, it's a flashlight, but it's a vagina. It's like this weird science fiction fucking William S. Burroughs Naked Lunch thing. Burroughs did he invent the fleshlight? I'm sure it's in Naked Lunch. It's gotta be. It's a flashlight, you fuck. Disembodied. So I did this kind of thing for a couple minutes. I was riffing on the flashlight, and I'm like, why is it shaped like a flashlight? So you can put it in a drawer, and people are going to be like, oh, that's just I guess that's like the pun of it. It's literally for the pun. It's a fleshlight, but it's not a flashlight at all. If the power goes out in your house,
and you're reaching in a drawer and you find your fleshlight, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Well, maybe not. You might enjoy yourself, but it's not going to do what you think it's going to do. It's not going to help you in a life or death power outage situation. Your fleshlight, you're going to be confused. You're going to think that was something else. So I don't know why it's shaped like a flash. There's a lot there. So I did like a minute. And to be honest, like, people were not really laughing. They weren't not laughing. The energy was like crackling, I felt. I didn't feel like I had the same effect on audiences like I sometimes do. To be honest, like, I wonder if I'm going over people's heads. Maybe that's presumptuous and way off target, but a part of me's like, this is pretty fucking funny, considering I'm just, like, making this up. And, like, even talking to the old woman and asking if she knew, to me, that was a lot braver than most anything I see most comedians do, and it was a lot funnier. I think it's a mistake to care too much about, like, was the audience into what I was doing, per se. Because there are, something that I'm learning is there are just so many different audiences. And to be honest, like, there's different ways to go about it, but with what I've been interested in and what I've been mining and sort of honing, my audiences are idiosyncratic. Like, the people at the Bar Freda show, Mo Hylas and Giorgio and all those, like, what they were doing was really not that dissimilar to what I did last night, to be honest. That one piece where the guy was telling some story, I think it was about the Mall of America or something, and he had music on in the background. It was more like a monologue, but the music kind of gave it this performance art quality. These people probably all went to ETW. It's all like that type of thing. It's all like experimental performance. Stand-up just happens to be this public, popular, and in some ways uniquely American art form, or at least like we invented it. I've heard certain comedians claim. Although it's interesting, the New York Times writes a lot of articles about stand-up, and they've had these articles about how in Paris it's like super popular. There's all these stand-up clubs that have become very popular in Paris, and in different parts like Israel, different parts of the world, now stand-up. India is becoming like a thing, or Iran. They imitate what they see here in a way. They imitate Seinfeld or Netflix specials. And I think that's kind of interesting, because I think they're serving a social purpose. These clubs are popping up because people want food for thought. The podcasting industry has kind of seeded this new stand-up boom, and social media and all of it, Now it's like you can, that form really works for like viral type stuff. It's pithy, it's bite-sized, it's short attention, it can be off the wall, and it's just hysteria. The world is becoming more and more dark and scary and kind of out of whack. And so stand-up does feel like how people cope with that. It's a hysterical reaction. I think to some extent I've been driven to this. I think at a certain point, like the Joker or something, you just like break. You're like, well, I've tried everything else and my life is a fucking joke. What, it's you have to be really desperate, I think, to do stand-up. Like, it's just such a scary, to a normal person, I think, what could be scarier? Like, public speaking is everybody's number one fear, and not only are you public speaking, but you're trying to make people laugh, which is like the other hard thing to do. So, I don't know. You got to be pretty far. I think it's how certain people deal with trauma, like this Palestinian guy with no parents. It's like, not to use him as an example, I think everybody there's a lot of short guys, there's a lot of tall guys. I think it's ways people deal with how they were different, how they stood out, who hurt you type shit. So, I don't know. I wasn't getting necessarily the reaction. Like I thought I was killing, kind of. I didn't have jokes, though. You know, it's not like I was folding everything over into, like, these punchlines. To me, that's the part of stand-up that I find kind of embarrassing. Is a lot of times the premises are funny enough. Like, the art of the punchline I find very overrated. And I'm sure I've harped on this a lot, but, like, I don't want to be a storyteller or, like, a one-man show person. Although, to some degree, maybe I'm more in that space. I think, like Eno said, you're in this space kind of between things. Although, the more that I do stand up, the more I start to see the buttons that those guys are pressing. And so I think, to me, it is a little bit of an intuitive process, because as a kid, I really was obsessed with comedy, and my family is really obsessed with comedy. My brother is incredibly funny. Both my brothers are funny, are very, very funny. My dad is hilariously funny. My mom is super, like, observant and, like, analytical about comedy. She really has good comedy taste. She's the one that got, well, I don't know if she got me into SCTV, but she was into SCTV. She's really into Schitt's Creek. I don't know. She likes what she likes. She's really into Key and Peele. But it's something that, like, I don't know, like every kind of mainstream zombie household in this fucking country, it's like there's music and there's comedy. It's one of those two fucking things. And to be honest, being in a rock band is just so fucking stale by this point. Being a comedian, I'm kind of behind the ball on that too. But I feel like it's still in a little bit of a heyday. Like, music is so fucking over. Like, comedy is a little bit of a boom right now. And so I feel like if I can just sort of like develop, I had a lot of funny premises, let's say. I was watching this interview, fucking Joe Rogan had Louis C.K. on recently. This is his comeback. And he's a douche. I don't like him, but I'm just, I'm listening to all these. There's a lot of these podcasts and shit are comedians talking about the techniques and the sort of lore of comedy and the behind the scenes, the inside baseball stuff. There's a big audience for that kind of stuff. So anyway, Louis C.K. was talking about how he builds his sets, his hours, his specials. And he's like, a lot of times it's the stuff that doesn't work in the beginning that becomes the best stuff, because that's the stuff he works the hardest on. As a performer and as a worker, that's where he's coming from. He's not thinking, okay, this really worked, so, like, I'm going to use this every night to just kill, because then he doesn't get any better. He's just leaning on his A stuff. It's like once he finds stuff that works, he kind of puts it in his back pocket, and he works on the stuff that didn't really quite fire the first time. I thought that was kind of interesting. Just as an example of how you're using the stage time and how you grow and how you retool stuff. Like, to me, I don't know. I find that people are way funnier just naturally in conversation and who they are. And then when they get up on stage and do stand-up, it's almost like this artificial, like, packaging of that. And I want a more, like last night I said, for the first 4 minutes, I really didn't give a fuck I thought I was just killing. And I was just, to me, I was just impressed that I was just like spieling. I wasn't really getting laughs, but I didn't care. I don't know. I thought I was being interesting and funny. I thought I was being funny. I was talking about how I cut my own hair, and, to me it was more about, I'm going to try, but about 4 minutes in, I realized, for most of it, I was kind of just like this, and I was kind of looking down, and I was doing, I had physicality and stuff, but I wasn't really. One thing these comedians work on, and you can tell they're working on it, is they try to make eye contact with everybody in the room. And I don't know why they do that. I mean, I do know why, because I think there's such a culture with this stuff of, like, we're working and, like, we're getting better and it's 10,000 hours and, like, what am I working on? I'm working on being comfortable with silence. I'm working on making eye contact. I'm trying to connect with the audience. Most comedians seem like they're doing seminars or something. And it's like, to me, it's just a little forced and artificial and weird. And I don't care if somebody looks at me. I'd prefer if they didn't, actually, at the show. It's kind of, it is what it is. Maybe I'll get to that point, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if you're not. So anyway, about 4 minutes in, I started to kind of look up at the audience, and I realized that, like, a lot of people weren't even watching me. They were all, like, looking down. And I'm like, they're looking at their fucking phones. And I don't think it's because I was doing a bad job, but I kind of expected that maybe people would be like, who's this guy? This is some fresh, new, cool guy. I mean, I think I got off a little bit on the wrong foot, because when I first got there, I didn't know what to expect. I'd never been to this place. And the Facebook post didn't really specify a cover charge or any kind of, most of these open mics, it's $5 for 5 minutes, or it's one item for 5 minutes. And they're specific about it in their posts. And so I looked at the post for this, it's Caravan of Dreams, and there was nothing specified. And I looked through the history of all the posts, and it never said anything about you got to buy something or pay money or anything. So when I first, not that I was opposed to doing that, but it also just kind of caught me off guard. So I go in, and there's a table set up right in front of the door, and it's a really cool room. It looks like a Wes Anderson meets a fucking Scorsese meets like a Jarmusch. Like, they have I know that's like the worst, like, white film bro reference network, but, like, they have, like, these nice red velvet booths with, like, the long table, and there's this, but it's kind of funky in East Village. I saw Cliff Feynman eating out front in the bar, or at a table, of Taxi Night. And, but it had kind of an old Italian, like these booths and shit, and it's a comedy thing. So I'm like, oh, this is a cool room. It'll just be a pleasure to perform here. That's another way I'm looking at this. It's just like I want to do as many rooms as I can. And that place, honestly, it'd be a great place for a poetry reading. I don't know why they don't do shit there. They've got a fucking stage. That's one of the coolest places in the East Village, Caravan of Dreams. I wish I had money and I lived in the East Village, because I'd go there all the time. I do shows there. So anyway, I first get there, and there's two people, and the lady turns around, and she's like, do you want to sign up? And I'm like, yeah. So I sign up, and then she's like, okay, it's $3 or you got to buy something from the bar. And I'm like, oh, okay. That kind of caught me off guard. And, I have trauma about money, so I react to it in like a real negative way. And so I'm like, is there a happy hour? And like, I wasn't trying to get the lady to like do something for me for free. I'm just like, you run the fucking comedy open mic here. Like, I assume she probably would know if there was a fucking happy hour or not. I didn't think it was like an out of bounds question. She acted like offended. She's like, I don't know. And so I was like, so then I walked out as if I was going to go buy something. And I was maybe going to check it out, you know. I was going to get water or whatever. I don't know. I was trying to figure out what to do. I mean, $3 isn't that much. I honestly should have just paid them. Because most of them are $5. And it's 6 minutes in a cool room. It's like, but I was so far down on the list, I was just like, first I wanted to see what it was about before I, gave him any money. But anyway, I just kind of dodged it. And I went and I sat in the back right-hand corner of the room, so it's like, I'm sure they knew that I didn't buy anything. And no, everybody was drinking these fucking sparkling Perrier waters. You could tell all these cheapskate comedians bought the cheapest fucking thing on the menu. They all bought like waters that cost $3 or something. It's like, you're comedians, you should be drinking. I know it's Manhattan, we're all poor, but like, Jesus Christ. You're comedians, like, you should be getting fucked up. This will be a lot more fun for everybody. I mean, there are some weird dudes. And there were no women there. There was literally one girl there the whole fucking night. Which, not the funnest crowd to be in. I mean, there are some weird fucking people that do stand-up comedy. Like, really fucking traumatized, scarred people. I'm gonna sit down for a minute. Oh boy. There was one guy I thought that had really great jokes and was pretty fucking funny. I forget his name. He did one joke. He was like, my dentist asked me, do you floss regularly? I said, no, I floss like this. Which was kind of a Steve Martin-ish joke. And then he had some other good ones. He said, I like my music like I like my food. Meatloaf. And I laughed really loud, actually. And he looks over at me and goes, wow, Meatloaf guy. And I was like, yeah, I actually am kind of the Meatloaf guy. I'm not ashamed. I am the Meatloaf guy. I'll wear the name proudly. At any show, I'd be happy to be known as the Meatloaf guy. He had good jokes. He was actually funny. Nobody else, actually, to my mind. One guy, he got off on the wrong foot. He said something about how he wanted to take a bazooka into a strip club. That's one of the things about comedy that I find interesting and also kind of off-putting, but also kind of, I don't know, there's something intense about it that I'm drawn to, is like, a lot of guys will get up and they'll say something that like makes you kind of afraid that they're gonna like shoot everybody, because we're in this like age of mass shootings, and I feel like comedians have this same kind of hostile, it's almost like an incel thing to do. There's a lot of hostility and anger and venom, and they share a similar profile, ideation of the Joker, that these mass shooters do. And so, to be honest, a lot of comedy shows I go to, I get uncomfortable because a guy will say something that's like really strange and kind of, it's like if you knew somebody that said something that like you'd probably avoid them because it's scary. Like this guy saying something about taking a bazooka into a strip club. I couldn't tell what the fuck. He said, well, he got off on the wrong foot because the first thing he said was, people confuse me for a feminist. and I'm not offended. He seemed like, so it was like immediately he's saying, I'm not a feminist. I think feminism is stupid. But people confuse me for a feminist because I don't like strip clubs, is what he said. And so he immediately just got off on this, like, dude, this is 2022, man. Get with it. Like, I think it's interesting to talk about that stuff, but, like, immediately the dude lost the room. Everybody thought this guy's toxic and fuck this guy. So he immediately lost his whole set. He was done, to be honest, from that point. And then when he said the thing about taking a bazooka into the strip club, first of all, you couldn't really tell what the joke was. You couldn't tell what the connection he was making was. It was something about how he didn't like strip clubs. But then he was like, something about taking a bazooka in the strip club. You're like, okay, this is scary now. Is this guy going to kill all of us if we don't laugh? That's how I felt. So he was kind of done from that point. He kind of, you could tell he had done it a good amount, and he kind of just fought through it. But you could also tell he was a little bit phased that he'd lost the audience, and nobody was kind of laughing at him. Because you could tell he had some chops. He was like your typical comedy guy. They kind of look like Norm. They kind of sound like Norm. They're just little norms running around. I would say half the fucking comedians out there are just guys who want to be Norm. The guys who are really serious about writing jokes and shit like that and doing it that way. So anyway, I mean, it's also really uncomfortable when a guy like that, you know, you can tell he says something that makes everybody uncomfortable, and yet he's still, like, trying to get eye contact from everybody. He's, like, looking around the room, and so if you make eye contact with him, it's really weird. You're like, I don't want to attract any attention from this guy, and Stacey starts shooting. It's just a fascinating... To be honest, I wanted to do more. When I was done, I was like, where's the next open mic? Let me do that one. I didn't even really care that I, like, bombed. To me, I think just being able to talk on stage was so freeing. Because with these poems, you're kind of... There is, like, this conscientious sculpting of the naturalness of the syntax or whatever. And that does make it a little bit like you're reading lines and you're trying to, like, you're reciting. And so there is a certain rhythm that you are patterning what you're doing over. Whereas with this, you're creating rhythms totally the whole time in the moment. Just like this. I would say basically what I did last night was almost exactly like this, except I tilted a little bit to try to be funny. And so, like I was saying, okay, about 4 minutes in, I realized that no one was really watching. Or people were watching, but, like, a lot of people were, like, looking down. And so I was like, oh, I'm a little surprised by that. I thought I was being pretty interesting and funny. Like, if they don't like it, I was just kind of like, well, that's their fault. I thought maybe it's because I was high. I'm sure I said some shit that was like, I'm high and I kind of forget that I said it. I had smoked literally right before I went up. Like I said that thing about how I'm a drug addict. But when I noticed that people weren't watching me, that's when I sort of got the, like, oh, maybe everybody isn't thinking this is hilarious and brilliant. And then that's when I kind of, like, started to doubt myself a little bit. Before that, I was just kind of rolling along, and I thought I was doing pretty good. It didn't faze me that much. I went the 6 minutes. I was pretty good with the light and the wrapping it up and stuff. I mean, I didn't necessarily land on some kind of super laugh or something. I kind of just, like, wrapped it up, but... to me, I did accomplish what I was trying to do. Like I said, I think I'm so early in doing this that judging it's not important. Like, people ask you when you tell them you did stand-up, they say, oh, did you bomb? And it's like, I definitely didn't feel like I bombed, because most people, when they bomb, it's more about them folding in on themselves. They implode. You can feel it happen. And it gets really awkward and, like, cringe. You can feel them feeling defeated and even hostile. That's when comedians get hostile toward the audience and start to... But to be honest, it is hard to make the audience laugh. And it doesn't always work. Even fucking Dana Carvey and these big comedians bomb and shit. And so... It's like that thing the person was saying about Richard Pryor. They'd go in on Monday and they'd kind of bomb. Somebody was saying they used to watch Richard Pryor. They worked the door at the Comedy Store. And Richard Pryor would go in on Monday and they'd bomb. And then Tuesday they'd get a little better. Wednesday they'd get a little better. Thursday they'd kill. And it's like, I don't necessarily know that it's that linear. To me, it's like you could bomb at any time. But I didn't feel like I bombed because I didn't really stop. I thought I kept self-amusing. And to be honest, at these open mics, I don't think there's really a lot else you can hope for. It's a place to get on stage, to get experience, and hopefully other comedians will see you, and you'll get booked on shows. And you'll get better. Like, that is why you do it. It's a practice space, and I think you can't take it too personally. Like with these poetry readings, it's like 3 out of 5 of them are okay. One of them is like a home run, and a couple of them are like not so great. It's like a couple of them are home runs. I've been going on stage. I think if I continue going at the rate I'm going, I will have been on stage 15 times this month. Shows of all different kinds. System Lord shows, poetry readings, comedy, stand-up shows with 20 people there, shows with 5 people there. All different kinds of audiences. Punk rock, East Village, old people, young people at KGB open mic, Gen Z, the cool kids over at Pete's Candy Store, all those comedians. The alt comedians at Bar Freda. I'm excited to go back there and, perform in front of those people. The alt comedians at Young Ethel's. But it's like more of a Park Slope vibe. It's like a little bit more Midwestern or safe, or kind of like McSweeney's or something. Ample Hills Creamery. LIC Hostel, reading in a fucking hostel. The first open mic that guy ever did. Phoenix reading series. Those people are serious poets. They're older. Have I done it? I'm doing Auto Shrunken Head tonight. That'll be a whole new... I want to meet the Three Rooms Press people. They're like the featured. My friend Constance used to intern for them, and I've met them, and we read at Cornelia Street Cafe. That was like technically a Three Rooms Press reading, so that was long ago. That was 7 years ago. Before I got distracted. So I've just done all kind of different rooms, all kind of different audiences. To me, that's the adventure. And I'm hooked. Like, this is what I want to continue to do. If I could just keep doing this, that's my goal. So I'm going in tonight to KGB to talk about doing a weekly Monday there. And I don't know. Is that going to be a good or a bad? I mean, I think it'll be an invaluable way to build experience. Having your own series, hosting. I'll get 5 minutes or so, 5 or 10 minutes of stage time a week, in addition to hosting it and running it. I can meet tons of people that way. Every week it will be interesting to see if it, what that does to stamina. I mean, to be honest, there is a big difference between performing as a goal when you're playing in a band. The received wisdom is twice a month. You do 2 shows a month because you can't get a draw if you do any more. And that hasn't been useful for me, actually. I think you want to do as many shows as you possibly can. With music, that's hard for me because first of all, I don't want to carry my guitar to open mics. So I'm out right there. Whereas this comedy thing, it's just you show up and fucking you can do whatever you want. No one else, you don't have to rehearse with anybody else. No one else knows what you're going to do. It's beautiful. As a performer, I'm just so into it. And like I said, I think from hanging out around comedians and in comedy clubs, I'll absorb what I have to sort of make my work a little more punchy in that way. I mean, I want to maintain... My work is already comedic. Like when I do this, it's primarily comedic. Eventually. The conclusions that I just naturally draw from things are generally comedic. But I don't want to prioritize that. To me, I would like to just speak on stage and allow comedic things to happen. I don't know if there is a market for that, but that's kind of what I'm experiencing or experimenting with. I want to use every open mic as a little piece of the puzzle. I want to tell a different story or deal with a different subject. Like last night, I was like, I'm going to talk about my mom. And to be honest, I didn't even really talk about my mom that much. I talked about my cutting my own hair and fleshlights. I didn't do any impersonations. That was also like a goal. I wanted to do a set that was more like stand-up. I didn't want to do impressions or weird character stuff or like performance art stuff. I'm just going to talk. I'm going to rely on that and see how that goes. I'd never done it before. The 3 times I did it before were at Broadway Comedy Club and then the 2 shows at Young Ethel's last Monday or whatever. And those were more like parachuting or skydiving, like a performance art thing. I was just doing wild screaming and doing impersonations whenever they popped into my head, doing Grodin, my extreme Grodin, etc., etc. I was basically doing like a System Lord without the music. Like an improv kind of movement, character, sprech time. But, last night, I was like, I want to stay more earthbound, and I want to try to play in this space that the other comedians play in, where it's like, I'm just talking. I'm not using super physicality. That stuff I can kind of lean on, and I just wanted to see what happens. If you go absolutely crazy, then people, it does leave an impression. Whereas last night, I just wanted to see what happens if I just kind of like remained earthbound and just talked. And first of all, I just wanted to see if I could do it personally. I was watching this interesting interview with Dice. Dice on Stern in like 2013, whenever he did Blue Jasmine. And he talks about, and I didn't know this, but Chris Rock actually came to him, or he kind of mentored Chris Rock in a certain way about certain things. And he said before Bring the Pain, which was kind of Chris Rock's breakout special, Chris Rock was saying his career was over. After Saturday Night Live, before Bring the Pain, he was having trouble booking stuff. Like, he didn't have a series, he didn't have anything. And so he kind of had to go back to stand-up and get strong. And so Dice was talking about how he mentored him about how he moved on stage. Because Dice would play, big arenas and shit. Madison Square Garden. But Dice has very, he has an esoteric way of looking at it, and he has pretty refined ideas about the schematics of what he's doing. He was talking about it's more like a performance art, what he's doing. And moving around the space, the way he moves. He said he liked Vegas-style rooms, which are wide and short, because the laughter really ricochets. And if you listen to The Day the Laughter Died, he said this thing in the Stern interview where he's talking about, in the beginning of his show, a lot of times he'll have like this kind of silence, and he'll just let there be this kind of silence. And he's like, because he wants to feel the audience. And I think with The Day the Laughter Died, that's really what that is. It's like he gets in this room, and it's a small club. I think it's Dangerfields. And there's like 18 people there. It feels like one of these open mics. You can hear like the silence between the laughter, and like you can hear that there's not enough people laughing to make it like a crowd laughter. It just sounds like a random assortment of laughs. Like 6 people are laughing at any one time. Which, to be honest, that's how most comedy shows are. You don't even get a big audience a lot of the time to create that kind of, to kill. A lot of times it's just like there's 3 or 4 or 5. It's like music, right? There's 10 people there. But you can see him, he's doing crowd work, and he's talking to all these different people, and you can see him feeling who they are, getting to know who they are, and then turning it into some kind of comedic slam or whatever it is he turns it into. He's improvising. And, there's more. Dice, I'm sure, is probably not, the most popular comedian these days, but I think just from a performance perspective, he's almost like somebody like Jim Carrey or that Sebastian Maniscalco guy, where it's like what they're doing on stage physically is worth studying just for that. And Dice was playing a character. He says on Stern it was theater. It was total theater. Every show he did, it was theater. He played the drums, and his costume, his leather jacket, rock and roll America. It's a character, I'm sure it's like an exaggeration maybe of who he is, but it's still, it's simplified, it's honed. And if you watch Chris Rock on stage, the way he kind of prowls and paces back and forth, you can totally see Andrew Dice Clay. You can see a lot of that attitude. I mean, it's coming from a different angle, totally. But Chris Rock was definitely one of the people. I think I mentioned it in my Tip Top. If you watch my Tip Top reading, I think it was either 2016 or 2017. I think it was 2017. I say something about how Chris Rock gets to walk around on stage. Why don't we? Why don't poets do that? Poets don't use any kind of physicality at all. It's just interesting to me, because stand-up comedy is so close to poetry. In fact, to me, it seems like a division of poetry. Stand-up comedy is like one genus of the species, or was that vice versa? I don't remember which is which. Of poetry, of oral poetry, and it's succinct. Jokes are crafted. These comedians who are out there trying to be writers for, I don't even know, fucking Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I don't even know. The Tonight Show or Late Night with Seth Meyers. The way they write jokes is crafted with that kind of specificity and economy of language. And a lot of times the thing that will make a joke work is similar to what will make a poem work. Specific word choice, specific reference, something that detail. The verb can make a line soar. There's a lot of in bits, the different things you do as a stand-up comedian on stage. You can tell long stories. You can do short little one-liners. You can add a bunch of those up. There's all different sizes, just like poems. Your special is like your book. You do a special every couple years or whatever. That's like your collection of all the bits. I got this bit, I'm working on it on stage. I'm working it out. I just find it's overlaps in a lot of ways. And I actually don't see that many poets working in that space. And for me as a performer, I think it's opening up a lot. If for that, if nothing else, if I can, it's almost like, doing RSD, where it's like by doing the sets, you improve other parts of your life. So it's like by doing the stand-up, the System Lord shows will get better and the readings will get better because I'll just be better on stage and I'll be doing things that are a little informed by what I'm doing in stand-up, which has a little bit more of a mainstream. It's something that I feel like I can try to do something that's like a little more mainstream, and it's not going to be like way off base for me. Because to be honest, a lot of my show is basically like, okay, one of the most successful bits and little clips I ever had was my 3-minute routine about 69ing. Which, to be honest, I could go up on stage and do tonight. We might be in the Me Too era, so I don't know if it would fly, but at the time, that bit was fire. My whole thing about 69ing was a pretty tight 3 minutes about how it's my favorite thing to do in life and how I wish I had a bumper that said I'd rather be 69ing. Because it would always be... I love 69ing. I think it's the greatest. It's just the utopian situation. What could be better than that? I mean, sex, don't get me wrong. Sex is perfect. But 69ing is giving. It's an Ouroboros. Anyway, I could go on and on. And I'd probably do it on stage just to try it. But I know that bit kills because I know that people watched it and went, holy shit, this is funny. That was like 2014, right? So that was before Trump was really a threat at all or even on the map in that way. And it was way before Me Too. So it was like I made jokes that were more gendered and, I was coming at it from RSD world where, like, to be honest, there's a lot of honesty about I don't know, gender relations, gender dynamic, let's say. And it's just like, it's guys talking about sex and stuff. So I've always been pretty raunchy. To use probably the most disgusting word in the English language, raunchy. I've always been raunchy. I can't help it. I don't know why. That's part of my honesty. Raunchy. It's like ranch, except with that U. That makes it... To me, I see salad dressing. When I hear raunchy, I think of ranch dressing. I'm raunchy, baby. Raunchy comedian. I think I am going to wear a suit on stage. I think that is actually a great idea. And maybe I think Frankly Fabulous could get away with the 69ing. Maybe at one open mic I should try being Frankly Fabulous and just do all my sex jokes. I'll do my raunchiest material like I'm Red Fox. Hey, who likes 69ing and fleshlights? To be honest, a lot of my jokes were about sex. I had this really great joke about cum shots and facials. I don't know if facials are as big a thing anymore, but, you know. I can't even go into it. It's too raunchy. Well, it's just such an absurd subjugation, really. And the women they look so enthusiastic about it in porn in a way that's like, I don't know. How could you even do that to somebody? To be honest, like, how could you do that? I mean, I guess it's hot. If a woman was okay with that and wanted that, I mean, I think coming on the tits, obviously, is incredible. Everybody thinks that's hot. But somebody's face, I just worry about their pores. You know, it's like, does it exfoliate? Is it bad for your skin? I don't know. Maybe it's good for your skin. And their hair, too. I'm like, God. How are they going to get that out of their hair? They're going to have to shampoo and condition and shit. I mean, if a woman is truly just, like, enamored with you, I guess they would love that. They would love to be used in that way. Not to get too, honest, or I don't know. It's 2022. Well, part of doing comedy, I think, is coming up with the new standards and having to calibrate. To me, you're hitting that audience in the same way that you're hitting somebody you're doing a set with. And, like, it is intense. But that failure's not really failure. I think with comedy, it's like, it's one of these things where you're just, like, walking the path. You have good sets. You have really bad sets. But those are funny. I don't know. That's like the intensity of it is like what makes it thrilling. And what makes it like... To be honest, I'm less scared. I'm less scared to get up and do comedy than I am to talk to women. Like, if talking to women, I just feel like... At this point, there's nothing... that I could even... I don't know. I just don't even know what I would say. I feel like it's way too loaded of a situation to approach strangers. Whereas comedy, I feel like I'm working on this thing. I'm developing this thing. It's okay to have this time where you're bombing and stuff. I mean, I don't feel like I am bombing. The two shows, I got laughs every time I went up. I got laughs. It wasn't necessarily like... It was a little cringe. But it wasn't necessarily like I crashed and burned like in the gnarliest fucking way anybody's ever seen or anything. I didn't cause like some kind of ugly scene where they're going to like put me on a list or something because I disturbed everybody, which, like, to be honest, every open mic I go to practically, at least one of the other comedians. Jack said he played the drums for this band, for the house band in this show at the Improv in LA. On whatever, Santa Monica or whatever it's on. And he saw a lot of the biggest comedians. David Spade, Kyle Kinane, he was at the show I saw. Kevin Pollak was at the show I saw. Who's that Rick Alverson guy? Who else? A lot of famous people were on the show. I don't remember. I think maybe that Kate Berlant was on the show. Camille. I saw Camille. He was hilarious. To be honest, he was the funniest guy, actually. He was fucking hilarious. I love that guy. He's funny as fuck. He's great. He's one of the... I think he's the real deal. But Jack was saying a lot of, even these famous comedians will bomb and turn on the audience and get hostile. Big names, people who are pros. You never know what's going to happen. And the audiences have changed. Obviously, we're in a new climate. I mean, Richard Lewis, he said on Stern, he's like, if he goes out and he sees a young audience, he's fucked. Like certain audiences are just not going to connect with what he does. They're not going to get his references. They're going to think they're lame or whatever. So I think that's true of poetry. I think that's true of anything, music. And so, I don't know. I think with comedy, these clubs that are near my house are a little bit more of like a mainstream audience, or like, what the comedians are doing at the Comedy Cellar and all those people imitating that is different than, like the Comedy Cellar's not going to have Matthew Silver, really. I don't think. They don't really want that. They want club comics who are like, David Tell, Louis C.K., Todd Barry, guys that like really know how to throw punches and just like have that rhythm, that back and forth. Louis C.K. said something interesting about how it's like watching the ocean, watching the other comedians joke, laugh, joke, laugh. Like that's kind of how I feel going to all these shows. I think for me, to some degree, it's like a replacement for a social life. Like, I don't really have friends at this point. I mean, I have friends, but like, they're all in Brooklyn. So I'm kind of isolated in this apartment. And to be honest, I'm like woodshedding. Let's call it that. I'm woodshedding. And I guess I'm a little bit late, but I am doing it. I'm going to go through September. Woodshedding. Because I'm hooked on this, honestly. Now that I've started doing it a little bit, I'm like, this is fucking dope, actually. And it's fun to just think, like, oh, I could, I'll say this on stage. Now I got this new joke, this new bit. I'll try this. I'll try this impersonation. I was working on my Eckhart Tolle impersonation. Because I've been watching all these Eckhart Tolle videos. And he sounds like Yoda with, like, esophageal cancer. See, comedians always make jokes about cancer. That's something I would not have done before I started watching all these Stern shows and Gilbert Gottfried and shit. They hit that kind of shit as, like, punchlines. I don't really like that, but, like, Eckhart Tolle, he sounds like he's constant, he's always trying to, you need to relax, get rid of the negative energy, but he's so quiet and he's so calm, his videos are so calm, meditation, people recognize me on the streets, and I tell them, fuck off. You need to get rid of the bullshit in your life and not worry about that fucking bullshit. I'm working on it. That's my Eckhart Tolle. I'm just trying to think of shit no one else has done. Like Grodin. I haven't seen anybody else do a Grodin. I know my Grodin is not... I don't know if I can actually do, like, great but I know I can... To me, it's funny to get up and yell like I'm Grodin. Clifford! It was too hip for the room. It was too hip for the room. It's just fun to yell like Grodin. And I think if you're having fun, I don't know. I feel like what I'm doing is smart and funny. I think it's... What I'm seeing the other comedians doing is not better. Some of them, like, you can tell are seasoned and they have the chops and shit. But they're still just doing the same fucking derivative stuff. They're not really thinking outside the box. I don't know. It's just a fun thing. I was going to try fucking salsa dancing. Maybe this is the same thing. I've got this time in my life. I mean, I'm returning to what I was doing before the before the pandemic, and really before I started getting involved with all these other people. When I started doing Holy Smokes, I was doing all these open mics and like multiple times a week. And then once I got involved with a band and a big group project at a house, there was less need to go out into the world. The open mics kind of dried up, to be honest. All the ones in Brooklyn stopped. And so we were doing shows in our house. So it felt like, okay, let's work on that. Let's develop that rather than going out into the world. And then with my ex, it was like we were doing shows, but there was still, we mostly were homebodies, to be honest. That was like my family life. We had the cat, and we just stayed home and hung out, basically, with each other. We'd go out and do performances when we had things booked with Wavetable, or I had a reading, or we were doing some kind of ipso facto thing, which we did do a number of times, actually. Only at the end did it become what it was supposed to be. The shows that we did in New York there was still kind of a lid on it. But we did do a number of shows. We did that Strange Stage, we did Windjammer, but we weren't going out and playing open mics at all. Maybe I would do KGB open mic, or like I'd do like Poetry Project, potluck reading or whatever. But we were at home most nights. And right before the pandemic in LA, I was starting to do open mics, or, anytime we'd travel, I'd do open mics. But it wasn't like, first of all, I wasn't doing comedy. And I wasn't doing music open mics at all. Because we were doing shows with music. I do open mic poetry readings as a way to meet poets and get into the, vibe of whatever was going on there. And to show my shit, and to get the word out. It's the best way. I wish that I would have had this like 15 years ago. Because every time you travel, you should do an open mic. It is the best way. If there's an open mic going on when you're free, go and do it. Because it's just a great way to meet people. And that's one of the most exciting things about traveling, is doing shows in different places. And so I'm so happy that I have that now. I can go and do a poetry open mic or a comedy open mic or whatever. And just get up. It's just a great way to kind of siren call to meet people, and to broadcast whatever it is you want to communicate. Whatever your vibe is, people will see it, and maybe they'll resonate with something, and they'll come up and talk to you. That's exciting, meeting people in different towns and shit. So in LA, that's how I met Hannah. I went to Peggy Dobrier's open mic. That's how we got involved at Beyond Baroque. Saw S.A. Griffin, saw Michael C. Ford at an open mic at Beyond Baroque. And going and seeing the poets, going to see Harry Northup or whoever. Going to readings in San Francisco. Open mics in San Francisco, open mics in Paris. You can show, it's so fucking cool to do your work in different cities. What could be better? I want to do a tour. That's something I've never done. I would kind of like, I'd like to do a European tour, and I'd like to do a United States tour. I would like to do, because to be honest, I've never really booked a reading in Columbus. First of all, I'd like to host an Easy Paradise in Columbus with like a bunch of poets and maybe some bands and shit. I've never actually done that there. And I'd love to do readings and shows in Pittsburgh and fucking Cincinnati and Cleveland and Chicago and Indianapolis and Louisville and Memphis and Nashville and New Orleans and fucking Austin and Miami and Tampa, Fort Lauderdale, Raleigh, Charlotte, Savannah. They'd love us in Savannah. We got to get to Savannah, man. Charleston, Asheville. I'd love to do the interior of this country. I've never done shows really in the interior very much, and it needs to happen. Just a road trip tour. Maybe Jack would be into that. Jack is funny as fuck. You know, you could talk to him and just get material. You know, if I could be like an outlet, you know, to be honest, I don't, as weird as it sounds, coming from me, I would be kind of okay being like a Bob Hope type comedian who, like, if I had a few writers, like if my brother fed me jokes or John Ryan or whoever, and I could get up and I'm the guy that says them, I wouldn't be opposed to that. If it makes it easier. I mean, the big block with getting up on stage to do stand-up comedy was material. And so I have to get up and do it with no material. Like, well, I think if you start doing it, then the material kind of follows. Like, now I'm on stage, so it's like I'm generating thoughts, like the Fleshlight thing. That's like a bit I could work on. and hone. You know, like there's letting the fact you don't have material hold you back, I think that was my big mistake. Like, if I could tell my younger self anything, it would be just like put as much energy out there as you can. Find a way. Whatever you feel like you want to do, if you want to get up on stage and go and talk, just go and do it. Create a space for that and do it. Don't let, like, I mean, I still let this stuff hold me back, not being able to fit into the norms, but, like, I'm better about facing it and doing it anyway. To me, it's just all experience at this point. Like, every time you go on stage, you learn something, you get a little stronger. Like, doing what I did last night, I didn't know I could do that. I thought, if I get up on stage with 6 minutes, I'm going to run out. And there's going to be some moment where I'm like, oh, fuck, I don't know what to say next. What do I say next? And honestly, that didn't happen at all. There was too much to talk about. I mean, I'm not trying to judge it on the audience reaction. I didn't stick around. I left pretty much when my set was over. I stayed for like one or two more comedians. But I probably should have stayed and talked to the people because they did seem cool. But I didn't want to have people give me the impression I didn't do a good job. I was proud of what I did, and I was pleased with it. And I didn't want to find out, like, afterwards that nobody wanted to talk to me or something. I'm going to change the camera and get water real fast. Maybe I'll go on stage with a golf club. Like I'm Bob Hope, I'll go on stage with a putter. Maybe I'll take that to the System Lord. My putter. That could get dangerous. I'd probably hurt myself. Or get a lawsuit. Or I'm sure I would break something. That's a tradition. It's not a real System Lord unless you break something. Yeah, so I'm excited about this open mic tonight. I'm going to KGB after to meet with them to talk about. There's a really good event at KGB with kind of the all-stars of. It's got that Annie Hamilton, who I actually haven't seen any of their work, but I'm curious. She's kind of living the dream. She's got my career. Annie Hamilton's living my career. She's kind of like a Spalding Gray. Well, I was reading this thing. It was her. Was it her favorite '90s films? I think it was. And she mentioned Spalding Gray, how she was watching, I think, Grey's Anatomy or something to prepare for her special. Or her, whatever the fuck it was, her show. She did a fucking one-person show at the Cherry Lane Theater. That's my ultimate dream in life, is to have a one-person show at Cherry Lane. Which I think I could do, actually. If New York was cool, and if I can hang in there. I mean, I'm regretting that I'm like 37 and I'm just like starting this. I should be starting a family, not a stand-up career. My mom said on the phone she really wants a grandchild. She said she turned 65. She really wants a grandchild. So, I don't know. I don't know how the fuck I'm going to pull that out of my ass. That would be an abrupt change. I don't even know who I would have a child with. There's nobody that, at this point, there's not any immediate threats or anything. You know, I'm more interested in what, like, Janine Garofalo is doing, Kate Berlant. I haven't seen Kate Berlant. And I don't want to do, like, weird character shit as much. I don't want to wear, like, weird makeup and shit. Or be, like, overly cute. To me, I do want to kind of be truth teller. I don't know. Acerbic, whatever. Speaker, public orator. Offering my hot takes. IRL. Not on fucking Twitter. This show at KGB tonight, it's Annie Hamilton, this guy Matt Starr, who read at the fucking open mic. He read the poem about that sex poem. It was pretty good. He was okay. He was pretty good, I thought. I mean, he was a little bit internet poety, but he was good for that, you know. I mean, all of these downtown people, they have this weird kind of like influencer veneer. They all wear velvet and, like, blue. The lights are ultraviolet. And there is just, like, this, I don't know. It's almost like Dracula. The Roxy Hotel Cinema. In this kind of new Manhattan. The Red Scare. But it's more like these downtown, like, Ben Fama, Rachel Rabbit White. The usual suspects of, like... They're at, like, these ultra-wealthy, elite readings. There is an element of that. Like, who that guy? Bumming with Sonny. That guy's, like, a TV star in England. So he's got over 100,000 Instagram followers. And, like, he's probably independently got some money. But he's, like, a poet. He's got a publishing thing. And he affects, like, I don't know. There's just something kind of corny about the aesthetic. It doesn't have this. It doesn't. It feels more like one of those Great Gatsby fucking Jazz Age lawn parties than like New York. Oh, I saw fucking Sean Ono Lennon and Charlotte Kemp Mole walking up 6th Avenue yesterday. That was that was the first time I'd seen them. She had pink hair, so that was kind of like how I recognized him. He was wearing a suit that was like beige. He looked pretty cool, actually. He had glasses. He kind of looked like a Wes Anderson character. Like somebody who was really cool in the aughts. I think he said he was the king of New York. I think Susan Kirschbaum knows him. And then she had pink hair. They were walking fast up 6th Avenue. They looked cool, actually. They looked approachable to some degree. I think I would get along with them, actually. I'd love to jam. I would love to jam with Ghost of the Saber-Toothed Tiger. I think we could make some super lit-ass shit, actually. So they should collab with System Lord. I thought about running up to him and being like, dude, you need to play with System Lord. I don't know. I let it slip through. Well, I was just having a conversation because at Phoenix Reading Series, they were talking about how they really wanted to get Sean Ono Lennon to do something on the series, to feature. And I was like, you could. I'll bet he would do it. Like, he's a New Yorker, kind of first and foremost. Like, and he's downtown. He's one of these, like, living in Manhattan is kind of, you see that layer still here, that kind of Macaulay Culkin, like Adam Green, Chloe Sevigny, like Lower East Side thing is still here. Those people still have a lot of cultural cachet. Vincent Gallo, I don't know where he is, but like that vibe still has a presence. And they're creative people, and they were doing sort of interesting stuff. It was like a reflection of the 60s in some ways. I mean, it wasn't as cool as that, but it's like a little more recent history, you know. And like, you know, the Brooklyn thing it did feel like kind of severed or like its own thing in certain ways. Obviously, there were things you learned from Manhattan, and there was a lot of interborough transit and influence, but like I said, I wasn't really that privy to all of that shit until I started living here and going to all like these garden readings. You know, like the Lower East Side really does still have like a community and a scene and a network of people that live there that have rent-controlled apartments, or they're rich, or they're rock stars, or whatever, that do stuff at Auto Shrunken Head, or like this Phoenix reading series, you know, with Dee Dee Champagne and Jennifer Juneau. It's like they get the kind of East Village legend people. You know, Ron Colm is at the fucking reading. John Pietaro. People that, like, I didn't really know who they were. Even going to Poetry Project and stuff, like, there's like a whole underground even beneath that, right? But they're a community. They all know each other. I used to go to Max Fish on Ludlow. That was kind of like a Lower East Side institution. Jim Jarmusch or whoever the fuck, you know. Taylor Made lived across the street. And it's still it's still here. Ann Waldman and fucking, you know, like I said, I saw Cliff Feynman at Caravan of Dreams, Don Yorty. And they do readings in the community gardens and 11th Street Bar, Anyway Cafe. You know, there's these places in the East Village that are kind of like local haunts. Like Caravan of Dreams was very much like that. I'd never actually been in that place. But it's like, what could be more East Village than that? It's so cool and funky. They had great music out front. Anyway Cafe. Puma Pearl's a good example of somebody like that. Where it's like, your average person probably doesn't know who Puma Pearl is, but they're kind of like Lower East Side famous. And they're playing gigs. They're playing fucking Anyway Cafe and shit. So I'm kind of working my way into that. So I'm going to KGB to meet with this lady. This open mic's at 7. I'm hoping that it's over by 9:30 because I'm supposed to meet the lady at KGB at 9:30. To talk, I want to go over the tech setup and just talk about the event with her. About my ideas for it. I don't even know. Do they have an event? Like, are they going to be done with that I can go over the fucking tech setup? Probably not. That event I was talking about literally is in the Red Room at 7. Is it going to be over by 9:30? I don't know. Maybe I'll get to meet some of those people. But I feel like I'm one of them. You know, like, I should be on that level. If I would have been busting ass last year like I should have, I'd be on that level already. But I got to do what I'm doing now and just focus on that and not worry about what's going to happen. I just need to put all my energy into this and make it a success. Because if it's a success, it could lead to other things. I mean, one of the things Dice was saying in his interview is like, the clubs in New York are showcase clubs. You do the shows hoping that a casting agent or an agent or whatever will be there and they'll see you and they'll want to use you in something. You know, maybe a director, you know. Once I did an improv thing. This is the only time this ever happened to me at, well, not the only time, but at the Pit. I did a improv scene, and this woman came up to me afterwards and asked me about like if I was an actor and this and that, and she wanted, I don't know, to use me in a movie or something like that. I can't, and it was like, that's kind of the idea, right? Is like you get out and you perform as much as possible, and hopefully somebody will notice you and use you for something. I mean, maybe I'm just being delusional, but I'd like to audition for TV commercials and all that. That was kind of fun to do. And what I'm doing right now with the comedy and System Lord and just everything, the visibility of it and the performance kind of orientedness of it, I feel like feeds into auditioning for commercials and stuff. There's such a vacuum of culture in a weird way in Manhattan because everything's in Brooklyn. Nobody can afford to live in Manhattan, so just nobody really thinks to do a show here. And it's expensive. I mean, all these venues want a guarantee and this and that. It's a different culture. But I think there is a hunger for it. I mean, the cultural elite are still here. And the buzz that UCB used to have was fucking crazy. Like this theater up here on 26 and the East were packed. There were standby lines to every fucking show every night, and there were tons of industry people and tons of cool people, and it was a hot place to be because it was in Manhattan, and it was connected with NBC and 30 Rock and Aubrey Plaza and all this shit, and Amy Poehler and people, Kate McKinnon and all this. And all that energy is gone. They have their little caveat place, but like it's really not the same at all. And performers just don't really have a home in this fucking city like they need. They need a venue that they can go to and hang out, and they just know that that's the place, and like that's where the energy is. That's where interesting work is happening. That's where casting directors are. That's where the commercials, the TV commercials that I auditioned for in New York City in 2012 were all taking their cue from improv. They were all trying to cast the improv people. All the people who got on house teams and shit, suddenly they were teachers. All these people were like fawning over them because they were successful. They thought they were going places. Somehow they were good at improv. Improv was just super hot because it was fueling all of those shows. The Office, Parks and Rec, all that shit. A lot of those performers, Silicon Valley, came from improv stuff. Donald Glover, I think, started kind of at UCB. And I'm not interested in creating like an improv fucking scene at all. But I think there is an interesting thing that could happen if we blend music, poetry, comedy, performance art, just downtown style. Give it a little bit of an avant-garde edge. Give it a little bit of that throwback New York thing. Get, legends in there. Get older people. Get younger people. Get Gen Z. Make it queer. Make it a safe space. Make it inviting. It's a great venue. It's the perfect venue for this. For all of those different approaches. People could show films, maybe. I think they might have a projector there. And let's make it about art rather than business. And let's make something interesting here. Rather than like, oh, I'm trying, the way that you get on the Tonight Show or whatever is by right now. I think there is a little bit of a perversion where it's like people are gunning for that. They want this kind of corporate success rather than wanting to be artists or something. Everybody wants to be a fucking celebrity and be on NBC or whatever. And it's like if you're an actor, if you're a performer, if you're a writer, whatever, a comedian, your job is to be an artist initially. And so let's live that way and treat our work that way. You know, that was one of the big things from improv culture that I would take away, is play at the top of your intelligence and treat your audience as if they're poets and artists. As pretentious as that sounds. and act like you are a poet and an artist. When you're performing, play at the top of your intelligence and take it that seriously. Don't worry about dumbing it down for some kind of commercial. I mean, I was listening to, on this Joe Rogan, Louis C.K., they're talking about Jay Leno. And they were saying that Jay Leno's goal on The Tonight Show was to write, he said this, he said his goal was to write jokes that had the broadest possible appeal. That would appeal to the most people. That was his goal. And so, judging him on those terms, I suppose you have more of an understanding about why his fucking comedy is as lame as it is. Living through the Clinton years, oh my God, everything was just blowjob jokes. And it was embarrassing. I hated Jay Leno. Do I disagree with this idea? I don't know. I mean, writing for the broadest possible audience, I don't even know how you do that. I mean, I'm sure you'd have to incorporate farting and things like that. Like you'd have to hit kind of dumber things. If you want more people, you're probably... Not that my audience isn't dumb. I don't know. It's about mixing high and low to some degree. For me, like I think culturally, a lot of people at my age, or just in general, living in America, in the commercial standard, you do live in this place where there's this mashing together of high and low, and things that are about things that might seem stupid are actually really smart. Like Beavis and Butthead, or is about kind of like characters that are like maybe not highly intelligent, let's say. But Mike Judge is highly intelligent. And so the show appeals to smart people, even as it's working on a level that's kind of dumb. Where it's like, fart knocker, and shit like that, you know? Or boobs. You know, it's like it's about kind of stupid shit. But it's a smart show. There's a lot of American culture that's like that. It's just kind of buffoonish and crass and about dumb shit. Like even something like, I think Will Ferrell said something about Steve Martin. That's what he was influenced by Steve Martin, because Steve Martin was initially the wild and crazy guy in the air through the head and all that. It was just about silliness, juggling cats, but there was intelligence to the silliness. I mean, Steve Martin, obviously a very intelligent, classy guy. He's writing short stories and writing novels, and he's an art aficionado and this and that. He lives like a high culture appreciator, even though a lot of his jokes, he kind of, that's a California thing. He thinks the pretend dumb thing is kind of funny. The kind of airhead thing is kind of funny. That's how he had mass appeal, I think. He was a very smart person, but he kind of acted dumb in a way. And I think with Will Ferrell, there's a little bit of an irresponsibility. Even though he's incredibly funny, like Step Brothers is like one of the all-time great fucking movies, I gotta say. It's fucking funny as shit. Like, I do think Adam McKay is good and interesting. I mean, but he's another guy. It's like he's smart, but he's kind of working in a dumb... He does have to kind of put it through dumb... That's Saturday Night Live, you know? Adam Sandler and Chris Farley, I mean, they're great. They're great comedians. And they're kind of man-children in a way. uh, that's what has mass appeal, right? I guess. I'm not, but with comedy, there's an art to that I actually kind of admire. Like if you look at somebody like Jim Carrey, right? This is somebody that has mass appeal, and the way he uses his body, I find incredibly artistic and inspirational. And I think he did influence a whole generation of performers. People my age saw what Jim Carrey was doing, and that definitely inflected. There was something truthful about the times we were in. GAC, Nickelodeon, video games, the kind of like Ritalin culture, ADD, fruit snacks, diets, advertising, the colors, that we were exposed to through advertising. That was kind of unprecedented. The vibrancy of the colors on Nickelodeon or TGIF or cartoons or whatever. They were able to broadcast kind of neons and shit in a way. And I think Jim Carrey, I mean, what he's doing, I suppose, is not that different than Jerry Lewis per se. But I think Jim Carrey did he exaggerated a little more. What he could do with his body was like, it was just this side of like freakish. In fact, some of the things he does are freakish. Like where he puts his shoulder over and shit. It is almost like a little bit of like watching like a contortionist or something. He's so good at it, right? And so I think a number of people my age kind of like admired him and sort of imitated him and do faces in the mirror and shit like that. So, that stuff I actually find to be a lot of fun. And I don't know, stuff I want to do on stage actually. I've done it with Wavetable specifically on, but I really don't do things like that with poetry. With poetry, I wouldn't go that far necessarily, although who knows. I want more freedom to explore. Poetry feels like kind of an uptight world. With comedy, you can just do wild shit. Because so much, you have real awkwardness, and every fucking show you go to, there's some kind of like clash. Especially in this climate we're in now, there's some kind of clash of like, somebody says something that's like very disagreeable politically or what have you. And so I think the room it's almost like being on a fucking subway. It just can take a lot of wear and tear. Whereas like with poetry, it's a much more delicate, kind of quiet, I don't know if it's more fragile space, maybe. People don't typically disrupt that much at readings that I go to. I'm about as loud and animated as a poet as you're probably going to find, I would say. Unless, I don't know. I'm sure there are a few people that might do more. I was just watching the John Giorno, Mitch Korber set. He's like in a club. It was probably fucking Caravan of Dreams. It looked kind of similar. It was like a back room somewhere downtown. And Giorno is like a nightclub comic. He digs in and he's fucking hilarious. And he's very animated. He's not Jim Carrey, but like he memorizes all his shit and he really like uses his body, To me, that's why he's such a huge influence. Because I do think if you want to judge it in that way, you could definitely say that John Giorno was a pioneer of performance poetry and a number of like multimedia things. He was very able to see way down into the future with his dial-a-poem and his records, the way he recorded everything, did albums, his use with synthesizers and Moog and sound echoes and memorizing his shit and doing it in nightclubs. If you watch Poetry in Motion, there's a clip of John Giorno like in a fucking bar and he's just rocking the place like he's fucking Stevie Ray Vaughan or some shit. You know, it's like the early 80s. Everybody's fucking wasted. They're drinking beer out of brown bottles. There's a fog machine and, like, you know, spotlights flying through the air, and, you know, you can see the fog. And Giorno is just up there just, like, slaying it. And he's a poet, right? There's not really that many people that take after that today. There are slam poets, but they don't... Giorno was a fine artist. Even though I would say he is another example of an artist who is incredibly intelligent and is highbrow, but is working with something that is accessible and immediately compelling and entertaining. You know, let's do some more blow. Like, I don't know if he meant that stuff. You know, when he called his album Sugar, Meat, Alcohol, and Cigarettes, or whatever it is, I don't know exactly what it is, or like, you know, a lot of his poems are almost like the negative thoughts. And so the whole year that I was listening to Giorno, and he's like, I don't want it, I don't need it, and you cheated me out of it. And all of that, it's like, those are kind of his bitterest thoughts, and he repeats them, and he really digs into it. I'm like, why is he magnifying and focusing on and reproducing the negative thoughts? I mean, in a certain way, they are the funniest because they're so intense and kind of like, it's almost like dialogue from a Scorsese movie. It's a little better than that, but it's got that kind of downtown Bowery back when it was really scary and shit. You look like a television set on a refrigerator, whatever it is. Like, he just rocks so hard, it's fucking crazy. But his stuff is absolutely poetry. He was way ahead of the times with his writing. Because he was really writing like it was movie dialogue. It's almost like these monologues where he just like assaults you. But I gotta think with Buddhism, you know, he was a huge... I mean, I meditated in his bunker. I should go back to that. That was really important. With the lamas. He was a Buddhist, so, like, you know, part of meditation is, like, I think, trying to focus on the positive thoughts and kind of create more of those and less of the negative thoughts, less of the kind of self-doubt and bitterness and anger and all the, you know, red meat and cigarettes and, you know, vodka and let's roll some more joints and do some more blow. And there's so much of that in Giorno's. We smoked a couple of joints and we did some blow and we drank some vodka and I cooked us this meal and there were all these monks meditating in my loft and William S. Burroughs had died and I possessed his soul. You know, just like the most insane shit. And there's always something that's kind of funny about it because it's so intense. He kind of has this smile, you know, that's kind of endearing. He's a comedian in a very extreme way. Actually, I do think you could say Giorno was a comedian. You could put him in front of a brick wall. I don't necessarily know that the audience at, you know, the Comedy Cellar is going to... I don't know. I would love to see Giorno at the Comedy Cellar. Can we get Giorno at Caroline's on Broadway? Like, how is Giorno never on Howard Stern, man? He would have been an awesome guest for fucking Stern. Like, to me, that's an oversight on the culture's part. Like, I don't know. I don't know if your average person... I read an interview with him, actually, where he said something about because he was an artist or avant-garde. I can't remember the word he used. But he was like, the average person would think it's weird, I think is what he said. You know, because I'm working in this kind of fine arts world. He said something about how the average person would see him and think it was kind of weird. Maybe because he's a performance artist or something. Which I thought was kind of interesting. Like, it's true. I mean, your average person probably doesn't know who Giorno is. And, like, But to me, Jorno is like probably my favorite stand-up comedian. Like when people say, "Oh, George Carlin or Richard Pryor or whoever is the greatest stand-up comedian of all time," I always feel like there's kind of something missing. You know, like as great as those guys are, because they're stand-up comedians, like I feel like in a certain way they're not. Oh fuck, they're not able to actually touch on like the most intense. Like they have to be Jay Leno a little bit. God damn it! I ripped the uh, crutch out of my thing. Hold on, I gotta fix this real fast. I'm coming up on 2 hours. Probably was gonna do something else today, but god damn it. Maybe I'll go back to Broadway Comedy Club open mic. I gotta get on McDougal. That's where I really want to perform. Motherfucker. I made some comments about my hair last night that were not necessarily jokes. It was more like I said, I was inspired by that guy with the baseball cap, where I was like, I just want to bring like kind of like ridiculous amount of honesty to this. I want to bring like kind of as much like self revealing honesty as I possibly can to this. Which maybe that's weird, I don't know. To me, that's kind of at the root of comedy. When I hear these comedians talking about like their families or their parents or this or that, I just hear so much fucking pain and like insecurity that I'm just like, I don't know. That's where the fucking jokes are. And so why not just start talking about that stuff? Like, what's the thing I'm most insecure about? Like, why not just start talking about that and jokes will come from that? I don't know. Or it'll at least be like, whoa, like this guy, like, I want to set an example maybe for other people where it's like they can, because I just find like so much of what they're talking about is so uninteresting. Like these comedians are just not very creative, a lot of them. They're just copying what's already been done and just staying safe. It's like there's so much to fucking talk about. I think that's one of the things I'm realizing. It's like comedy is a place where you go and you talk about shit. That's like why, like I was saying, all these comedy clubs are like popping up in like fucking Paris and shit. I was reading about the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Apparently that's some kind of huge stand-up. You know, all these people go with like their one-person shows there. I guess I don't even need the fucking crutch. It was kind of small anyway, whatever. This one guy last night told a joke about how he matches with all these girls on Hinge and they love, you know, his responses are all perfect and they're super into him, and then they ask how tall he is. And he says, I'm 5'7" in heels. And then they unmatch him. I'm like, dude, first of all, that's just not a good way to put that at all. Like, that's weird. If you're actually saying that. There's a lot of guys from New Jersey, like, but, you know, inevitably somebody makes a height joke or something. This guy the other night goes, dating in New York is easy. All you have to do is reply to people's texts and be 6 feet tall. That one kind of stuck with me. But I have also noticed that these rooms are battle spaces for that kind of stuff. And like the room last night, most of the sentiment was people trying to be woke, I would say. Like, guys were trying to kind of be... They were kind of trying to show that they were, like, white knights or whatever. Who could that be? Like, one guy made a joke about a lot of these... I think it was a guy. Maybe it was a girl. There were 2 girls there, I think. And they were good. I like them as comedians. I would have booked them. There was one black guy with dreads that was pretty funny. He went early on. I liked his stuff. Part of the reason for doing this is like maybe I'd book people from this. So seeing who's out there, seeing who you like, whatever. It's kind of part of the fun. Seeing how people do it. You learn from watching the other people, too, So this guy said, there was some recent thing, some open mic or something he was at, and, when they give you the light, that means you have 1 minute left. And he's like, at this open mic, 4 different guys, when they had 1 minute left, started talking about Roe versus Wade. And he's like, yeah, we're going to tackle this issue in 1 minute. Leave it to men that think that they can... that was the kind of attitude. It was like you wanted to be on that side of things. You wanted to be making fun of guys rather than I think any kind of talking about gender differences or anything is probably going to be looked on as hacky. Particularly if anything you say is sort of could be perceived as not being totally pro. To be honest, those spaces are so toxic as it is. Literally, it was 20 guys and 2 girls. And, I guess it's good that they're erring on the side of the other side. But, that's one of the aspects, I think, of the audience thing. And with the comedy stuff, there is, a disparate, spectrum of in Brooklyn, the shows you're going to see are going to be expressly queer, BIPOC, women. That's the point of the show. That's what it is. They'll advertise it as that, And that's cool. And I'm sure that what that audience is comfortable with is probably different than what, I went to an open mic at Young Ethel's and this guy said the N-word. He was from Africa, I think. But still, it was oh my God. He went on right before me. And there was nobody there. There was literally 5 people there. So, but that's what I'm saying. Is that kind of shit happens at these comedy shows all the goddamn time. And when I bought weed from that guy on Monday, he goes, "I know what you need." I know what you want, I think is what he said. And I think this is good stand-up weed because it's chatty. Last night, like I said, the first 4 minutes, I felt great. And then I kind of noticed people weren't watching, and that's when I sort of... I don't think I didn't implode. I didn't finish strong like I could have. I started stronger than I finished. But I was surprised people weren't laughing my first few minutes because I was being very funny. I don't know. I guess you can't. Well, I don't know. Can you criticize the audience? Can you question the audience? I don't know. You can't think too much about any one thing. It's like with RSD. You're supposed to go out every night, and you get addicted to it in a certain way. The more you do it, the more you're like, yeah, I love this. I'm living. And, you have some bad nights. You have some phenomenal nights. But you still go out and you understand that that's a part. You get stronger. You get better. I think that's something that for me is kind of important. With poetry, it just literally just feels like there's nowhere to go. Like there's no possibility very much that I'm going to get booked on anything. Whatever readings I do for poetry are either things I book myself or they're like open mic type situations. I almost never get invited to do anything. And it does happen from time to time, but it's rarer. It's not like, these comedians might do 6 real shows a month or something, in addition to the open mics, or more. There's a real market for it, let's say. There's more people doing it. There's more places it's being done. There's more shows. There's a bigger culture that it's sort of attached to that you can move into. If you get noticed, you get booked on this show, this person notices you, like I said, then you're auditioning for this. I mean, when I would go on auditions for commercials, I auditioned with Godfrey. He thought I was funny. And I auditioned against, like, some dude that was on Saturday Night Live. I forget what his name was, but he was just, like, one of the generic white guys that they had in, like, 2012. It's like, this fucking guy is on Saturday Night Live right now, and I'm auditioning for the same fucking thing he is. It's like, it's about getting into those circles by doing stand-up. And maybe I'd like to, like, take acting classes, maybe, too. That would be another way to sort of work my way into that stuff. Living in Manhattan has kind of shown me these worlds. In Brooklyn, there was just other stuff going on. The music thing was more present. More avant-garde approaches. I was more interested in poetry personally, but stand-up, there was a comedy thing, but I didn't pay much attention to it. I'd go to Ed Sullivan on acid from time to time, but I kind of keyed out. I remember I went to a thing with Olivia. She invited me. It was this guy who had been a poet, I think. And he became a stand-up. And she probably knew him from Comedy Cellar or Todd Barry or something. And she got free tickets. That was at the Bell House. It was his taping for his CD or whatever. Or whatever you want to call it, special. It was 2016, I think, the very beginning. I made a video about it. And there were probably a couple hundred people there in the Bell House. It's a big... That's where fucking Tim Heidecker's playing. And I used to live right near there. Blocks from there. Most of the shit that's there is pretty lame. Like the Moth and shit. That's like super Brooklyn, super NPR shit. Super Park Slope. But, that guy had gone from doing poetry to doing comedy, and now he's playing to 200 people. He's got a special. He's probably opening for people. He might be a touring comic. There's jobs. There's attention. There's places you can go. There's like a ladder you can get on. I mean, as far as making it in show business, that's like a ladder you can get on. With poetry, there's no ladder there. Like, you have to go to school. It's pretty much that simple. Like, you'd have to invent an audience which is sort of what I'm trying to do and I hope happen. I hope I can draw people in by doing comedy and by hosting this event at KGB where I can show them kind of my combination of like performance art, monologuing, talking, stand-up comedy, poetry, mime, whatever, improv, spontaneous composition, and bring people into that and show people my books and be like, check this out. This is, this is where it's at. If you're looking for podcasts, if you're looking for things to listen to that are sort of highbrow and lowbrow at the same time and are accessible but intelligent, like, check this out. It's not stand-up, but it's sort of adjacent to that. That's one of the elements of it. It's stand-up friendly. I think it will be a huge breakthrough to have a public, especially a place as public as KGB, which is like, there's name cred there. If I'm the host of the open mic, there's a certain cachet that just comes with that. And it'll guarantee people will come in. There will be people that will come just for that, just to perform there. It's a great room. We can make it into a thing. We could get the New York Times down there. That's what I was trying to get going on at Castelli and all that. But I think one of my bigger problems is not necessarily what I've been doing, just like the lack of visibility. What I've been doing has been interesting pretty much the whole time. If I would have been less nervous about it and just more revealed, like my TV show or Holy Smokes or even these talk pieces, I've been doing this since 2014, if not longer, and recording them. On my other laptop, I probably have tons of old talk pieces about those years. I just have kept it kind of hidden. Even with my TV show, like I'm just starting to share info about it through social media and talk about it in person. And my books, same thing. I've had books published since 2019 that literally almost nobody knows about because I just haven't put them out there as much as I should have. So it's hard, It's hard when you're working or money can be a problem. I mean, this apartment makes all this stuff possible because suddenly I'm in a neighborhood where there is all these comedy clubs and this whole scene. And fucking Louis C.K. lives in the neighborhood and Mark Norman lives in the fucking neighborhood. And you see these people on the street. You see David Tell. You see Todd Barry. You see people waiting in line to get in the Comedy Cellar. The Pit is right there. There's open mics all over the place. And then Brooklyn, same deal. So I'm seeing now what most people probably saw when they were in college. If I had gone to NYU or the New School, I would have seen, that's why all those kids got into UCB in improv, because it was 10 blocks from NYU, 20 blocks. Or the New School, or FIT. It's literally right around the corner from FIT. So kids who went to NYU had a huge leg up as far as, like, if you're 18 years old in the Village, you could go to an open mic at comedy, shop or whatever, maybe. Maybe it's 21 and over, but you could start to get into that scene. You could take improv classes. You would see that it's happening. And in fact, Adam Sandler and fucking Sarah Silverman, people like that, did go to NYU. That's how they got here. That's how they got on SNL when they're like 20. Because they were in fucking downtown New York. It's not actually that big of a scene. There's not that many people doing this. And if you're in these places, this is where you're going to get noticed. You're not going to get noticed in Columbus, Ohio, right? I should have been doing it anyway. I should have been performing, and to be honest, I should have started doing comedy when I was like fucking in high school. As crazy as that sounds, I think it's just a natural thing to practice and get on stage and do. It's a good thing to be able to work on. For me as a performer, all of the things that you have to do, talking, thinking of ideas, being funny, bringing your body to it, being charismatic, being a host, being a public speaker. That's all stuff I want to do. So it uses all my facilities, I think, in a way that's a little more immediate and unadulterated. With poetry, there still is a step between you and pure expression. You write it down, then you read it later. With the comedy, you can just blow. You could do that in poetry too, but I don't know. It would be hard to be poetic spontaneously. I feel comfortable talking about like real life things spontaneously, but if I were to like make up a short story, it could be an interesting exercise to try and write like a fiction story when you're talking out loud, or write a poem. Maybe that's what I'll do next time. I'll try and write a poem. To me, they are poems, but my poems are imitating the way I speak, whereas I could imitate with my speech sort of a more poetic. I did that once. There was a Scenes from a Life thing where I improvised a couple poems on my photo booth camera, and I sent them to a bunch of the Denim Skin people. There was like an email ring, and it may have been John Lorry's. I think it was. It sounds like him, but I didn't know who he was at the time, really. I didn't know who he was at all. And so I sent these videos, and I thought they were okay. They were pretty good for being like spontaneous poems. They weren't bad. I mean, they weren't the greatest fucking poems in the world or anything, but they were kind of interesting. They were the first ones I ever tried. It was about Schiller Park and Shakespeare and all that. And there were elephants or something. Rhinoceros, I think. Because I did it in my room in Park Slope in my bookshelves, and I was reading Rhinoceros across on the bookshelf by UNESCO. And I sent it. I think John Lorry sent a fucking email back that was like kind of negative. It was like, I like your shirt. I like the way your head moves above your shirt. And so I don't think that that's what killed it, but it was like maybe not necessarily the reaction I was looking for. It was just something I tried once, right? But I think that could be an interesting technique. I had done it once into a tape recorder driving to a job I had in Huntington, West Virginia. I got a job, God, what year was that? Probably 2009? I think it was when I lived on, I think it was when I lived on Denison. Somehow I got this job. At that point, I still had an agent somehow in Columbus. And it was for a lotto commercial. And I think they were just trying to get me on the payroll for the year. It's like they needed to have you do one job a year for like tax purposes to just kind of keep you active. And so I got this thing in a lotto commercial. I was just a background person. I never got any real parts hardly in commercials. I was almost always just like background in lotto commercials. Was it for the university? I think it was for the lotto. But it was in Huntington, West Virginia, which is like where Marshall is. We Are Marshall with Matthew McConaughey. It was like shortly after that. Or it was Mark Wahlberg, wasn't it? Is that who was in it? Or was it McConaughey? And so I drove my dad's van to Marshall. He let me borrow his van because my car probably wouldn't have made it. And it's like 4 hours or something. And you drive through southern Ohio, so you drive like 23 through Chillicothe and all that shit, which is where my dad grew up. And it's country. And so, I hadn't been down there in that many years. And so the landscape really struck me. And I took out my iPhone and I voice memoed like an 18-minute poem about I want to move to the country. That was like the recurring line. I want to move to the country, blah, 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 blah. Where the smokestacks like generate clouds or some shit. I don't remember. The clouds are fucking massive. And the mead is out there where they make paper. So it blows up all these crazy fucking smoke. Chillicothe smells like shit. It smells bad. Because the mead is there where they make paper. And they poison the creek. And the whole town just reeks. like constantly. I guess you get used to it if you live there, but that's like pollution. And that was like a spontaneous poem. I made a song out of it, but it was on my blog, Dispatches from Solitude. If you want to check it out.